Today, we're cooking in bulk so I can stay on plan during the week, and hopefully you can take away some of the techniques and ideas that I use so you can stay on plan. So if you're ready, it's about to get delicious in here. All right, so we've talked about it a little bit in the past, but today we are doing a meal prep episode. I'm gonna show you how I cook my chicken in a big batch and how I cook my rice in a big batch. Without any real further ado, I wanna get some things going before I start to explain what we have and what we're working with today. So the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna slide over to this side of the table. We've got our rice cooker back in the studio. This is 2 episodes in a row that we've got the rice cooker. This is already, I already washed this rice. So all I'm gonna do is gonna toss it into the pan. And if you want a reminder on how to wash your rice so you can get some of that starch off there, go back to episode number 9 where we made the tomato and egg over rice, and you'll see how I wash my rice out. So all I have to do here is fill this up to the number 3 line because I have 500 grams raw weight of white rice that was in this basket. It's now in the rice cooker. Kyongime brand that I picked up from H Mart up in Burlington. It's my go-to brand right now. It ends up breaking out to about $1 per pound. I bought a $40 or a 40-pound bag. I think it was like 35 bucks a couple months ago that I ran out of. Then I picked up a 15 to refill that a little bit. And then when that runs out, I'll go back and I'll get another 40-pound bag. Super cheap carb source. So next thing we're gonna do while we're getting ready is we're going to get our braising liquid, our braising stock set up. So this is about 4 cups worth of water. And I'm just gonna get that in here into our pan that we're heating up on high. And I'm gonna toss in, this is an dried anchovy, mushroom, and some kelp little packet thing that's like a stock packet. So we're just gonna boil that in this water as this goes. So this will take about 5 minutes just to make a homemade anchovy kelp stock broth. For this recipe, you can use that stock, you can use dashi, you can use vegetable stock, chicken stock, beef stock, whatever you really want to use. You could use water if you want as well. So now that we kind of have those 2 things ready, I can kind of get into what we're going to do today. So we're going to break down this big pack of chicken, and we're going to kind of braise it or simmer it in our teriyaki, homemade teriyaki sauce. If you remember back episode 2, the gyudon episode. Gyudon. We're gonna do the exact same thing. Rather than using hondashi or dashi stock as the base, we're going to use the anchovy kelp stock. We're gonna add our teriyaki sauce to that. We're gonna cube up our chicken, throw it in there, simmer that off. Super, super easy. You can do a huge batch of it. We've got a 3-pound bag here, or a 3-pound packet of chicken. So I mentioned in that gyudon, the gyudon episode, how easy it was to upscale that recipe. I made 1 batch, but I mentioned you can make 6, 8, 10 servings worth in 1 big pan and serve it to 6, 7, 8, 9 people. Well, I was thinking a couple weeks ago, I'm getting a little bored of my regular oven roasted chicken. How can I do it differently? Let me braise my chicken in some homemade teriyaki and stock in a big batch, and then I can have chicken for the week ready to roll. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we've got our stock going, we've got our rice going. 500 grams raw weight of rice. That's gonna last me about 3 days, maybe 4 days in the office. If I eat it twice a day, it might go even faster than that. So I'll have to do that again. So that's something I do twice a week. This amount of chicken should last me the entire week. I really usually only have to do it on Sundays, even though we're filming on Monday morning because I specifically waited till today to make this. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our teriyaki sauce put together. Remember, back to episode 2 again, teriyaki sauce, 2 parts soy sauce, 1 part mirin, 1 part sake. Now, that was for 1 individual serving. Today, we're just gonna double the ratio. So rather than a 2-1-1 ratio, we're gonna do 4-2-2. So we're gonna do 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of sake, and 2 tablespoons of mirin. And what I like to do actually is I like to weigh it. So as I weigh these out, I'll let you know how much I'm putting in there. So we're gonna start off with the highest volume, the highest weight of liquid. We're gonna do 60 grams of this soy sauce. This is the CJ1 premium soy sauce that I've used on the show plenty of times. It's my favorite. I'm running low in this bottle, so I'm gonna have to go up to H Mart pretty soon. There's a couple things on my list that I have to pick up anyway, so I can't wait to make that trip in the next coming weekends, because H Mart is probably my favorite place to go shopping on earth. So 60 grams there. Then we're going to do 30 grams of mirin. I think I just got this from Market Basket. Nothing special about this one. Regular old mirin. So we're going to do 30 grams. There we go. And then we're going to do 30 grams of our Gekkeigen sake.
Gekkeikan.
Which again, you can find this stuff everywhere. This whole bottle is like $9. This has lasted me a while, but actually once I started making the bigger batches of braised chicken, I've been running through my sake a little faster than usual. So we're gonna do 90 grams of this. And again, the alcohol is gonna get simmered out as we put it on the heat. So we've got our 30 grams of sake in there. So again, 4 parts today of soy, 2 parts of mirin, 2 parts of sake. And again, if you're making teriyaki sauce at home, 2 parts soy, 2 parts mirin, 2 parts sake. You can add sugar if you like. I'm not going to. Again, I have nothing against sugar, but it's just added calories in this situation. I want to keep the calories as low as possible. Let's take a look here. This is heating up pretty nicely. It's not quite up to a boil yet. We're going to even kick the heat up. And again, we're just letting that cook down. We're not going to take that packet out almost till the very end. We're just going to let those flavors get in there. And I know some of you might have heard, oh, dried anchovy, like that's a lot of flavor. It actually ends up being like a pretty clean flavor. It's not very fishy at all. It just adds a nice depth, a nice little bit of umami with the mushroom, with the dried anchovy. You don't get a big fishy flavor from it. So don't be worried about that. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to break down this onion, because much like gyudon, we're going to put some onion in our braising liquid as well. This is going to add some nice sweetness, that nice oniony flavor, just as a little bit of an undertone to our chicken. So I actually was able to find this morning this really small onion. This thing is tiny. It's like the size, it's a little smaller than a baseball, which is perfect, because usually you've seen we end up with those monsters and I end up throwing away half of it because I don't use it. So today we're going to be able to use this whole thing. So I like to cut mine in half around like orbitally. Then I cut the ends off and I toss this in the trash. Then, as you know, I've done this plenty of times, I take the whole outside ring out. I'm going to do the same thing here. And then we're going to toss all the skin away just to keep our cutting board nice and clean. We got a double cutting board today because we're going to use a different cutting board once we break the chicken out. Then what I've been doing actually recently to dice my onions, because I'm not very skilled at dicing onions, is I cut like a little flat side like this, and then I stand it up like so, and then I cut rings. Be careful with your fingers as always, as I usually am not. But I like to make that little flat side so it has something to kind of stand up on, and just kind of hacksaw through your onions into rings like this. All right, that one's not going to cut anymore, and I'm not going to push it. Do that. We're getting the lacrimators out again. I'm about to start tearing up. This is going to be fun, as it always is. Same thing there. I'm not going to mix it up. I'm not going to risk it. And then just kind of dice it into, I don't know, relatively small cubes. It doesn't have to be that small, because these are going to cook down and kind of simmer out as they go. So cut these up like this, and kind of that's good. I'm actually even going to leave those end parts the size that they are. And here we go. The lacrimators are in full effect. I'm trying not to cry too aggressively here. I just am so emotional about this recipe. All right. We just barely survived that, as you can see. So it's part of the deal, part of the weekly process. Again, there's our stock simmering out. We're just going to keep letting that go. A decent amount of water in there to kind of bring up to a boil, so that's going to take a little bit, which gives us plenty of time to start breaking down our chicken. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my onion board over there, and special guest today, we bought some rubber gloves because we're handling raw chicken, and I don't want anybody from the Board of Health calling me because I was handling raw chicken, which just brings me back to my days when I worked at a certain fast casual restaurant and you used to have these things on all the time, except like the clear ones, not these like latex ones, but brings me back. I haven't worn latex gloves since. So, chicken. Just the chicken breast with the bone meat. It's cheap. This is 3.64 pounds. It cost me $10 at Market Basket. That's cheap. Walmart is actually a touch cheaper. You can get like 4.5 to 5 pounds for $10, 10 or 11. So you can get a little more, but I tend to find that when I buy the 5 pounds, I don't really eat the 5 pounds anymore. There was a point where I was eating enough chicken to eat through like 4.5 pounds like in a week. Now I find myself closer to like high twos, like 2 3/4 to 3 pounds. And as you can maybe kind of see, there's a lot of fat on here that I like to trim off because it's just kind of gross. Like it's not a combination of one, I don't want that fat because again, 1 gram of that fat, 9 calories or whatever. So obviously that keeps it a little leaner, but also it's just kind of gross. So I like to cut it off. So I'm going to show you guys how I do that. So open up our chicken packet here and we're going to throw this immediately into our trash bin, the wrapper. And then I'm a big fan of doing everything with kitchen shears because it's just easier to cut than it is to try and trim it with a knife and all that. So get yourself your kitchen shears. A lot of people that I talk to, they just think it's like an extra pair of scissors that comes with their knife thing. No, use them in the kitchen for kitchen purposes. It's going to make your life a whole heck of a lot easier. So on cut cam, which today is shear cam, this piece over here, there's a lot of fat, there's a little bit of meat there. To me, it's not worth it. So I just snip that off. This fat here on the end, just snip that off. See how fast it is compared to trying to do it with a knife, which I'm not even going to compare it with a knife just to save myself the hassle. But just get in there and then you can kind of pull some of this fat off like that. And you don't have to go too crazy, but just like the big patches of fat you want to get rid of. Like usually it's in a couple spots. It's down here at the bottom, there's usually fat. Up here at the top, the little side wing that I cut off, and then down the side. So I'm pretty consistent. So I'll show you again. So here's this little side wing that I'm talking about right here. Let me move this forward a little bit. And I just cut this down. And so I know the packet said it's 3.64 pounds worth of chicken, but when you trim it up, you lose like a pound or whatever. And then when you cook it, it cooks down to a cooked weight that's probably like 3/4 of the weight listed on the package. So get that big piece of fat off there. You got this little fat right there. Get that. And you know, you're just kind of looking around, and that got lucky there, that came right off. And then kind of any pieces that also look like a little bloody or something like that, don't look super appetizing, just cut it right off. You don't need to eat that. So that piece right there is pretty much, let's get some of this here down the side. And it's fine, like I said, if you leave a little on there, you don't have to go crazy. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my first pair of gloves off because I wanna come over here and check on our stock. And again, we're gonna throw this into our trash. This is coming to a nice boil, very nice, as you can see there. That's got a really interesting fishy flavor to it, or scent to it, but again, it's not gonna have a big fishy flavor. So the next thing we're gonna do as we're almost ready to combine everything in the pot is I'm gonna re-glove up, and then I'm going to, first I'm gonna butterfly the chicken, and then I'm just gonna shear it out into little cubes. And I'll show you what the end product of that looks like. So, butterflying. Be careful with the knife. I'm not gonna butterfly this the way that I usually butterfly it because I'm not even gonna show you because it's risky technique. So don't do it. Don't do it that way. Like I said, I'm not even gonna show it. So to butterfly, let me move these pieces so you can kind of see what I'm doing here on cut cam. So I'm gonna kind of go to the side on a little bit of an angle, and I'm just gonna cut through the midline like this. So then I can open it up, and I'm just gonna keep doing these little score cuts and cut that until it's cut in half. Now, if you were butterflying it, you wouldn't cut it all the way through. You would cut it into, I'm gonna put these in there for now. You would just kind of cut it. I'll show you what the end result of a butterfly would be before I cut it in half. But again, be careful with your fingers. And then, so if I was butterflying this one I went a little deep as well. But you could just kind of do like this, butterfly it open, and then if you wanted to throw it on a pan, you could roast it in a butterfly. So for this, I do use the knife. This is like one of the few times I use the knife when I'm kind of cutting up big pieces of protein like this, just because you can't butterfly with scissors. Maybe you can, but I don't want to. So let's cut this just in half. And again, I'm just doing this to make, when I go and scissor these into little pieces, to make that process even easier. This bucket's getting filled up. So let's move to this. We'll move on to the next one. We're going to check on our stock once we've kind of got all these ready to roll. So again, cut that in half, then just set aside for a minute. And one last one, and I actually see a little bit of fat here that I want to trim out. See, this is what you'd have to do if you weren't using the shears to cut it off, which can be a little bit of a hassle. So then one more time. Again, I'm kind of cutting today on an angle. Usually, I'll tell you how I usually cut it. I hold it in my hand like this, and I cut downwards, and I make sure I don't cut my palm, and then I split it open. But I didn't show you how to do that because I could see a lot of people cutting directly into their hand, which I don't want to do. Take your time, be careful with your knife, use your kinesthetic awareness to know where the knife blade is in comparison to your hand. So, we got a bunch of latex gloves, so I'm just going to keep running through these. They used to hate me at my job because I used to change gloves. You're supposed to change them like every certain amount of time, but I would change them every like 5 minutes, and they would hate that because you're running through a bunch of their stock of gloves, but I don't really care that much. I got a weird thing with my hands and them being like sanitary. So ask anybody who knows me. I wash my hands a lot, and I'm super, especially when I'm cooking. I wash like a Sunday meal prep where I'm just handling these with my with my bare hands. I'll wash my hands like 8 times. It's ridiculous. Anyways, back to the show. We're getting off on a side tangent as always. Onions, time to go into the stock. This has been going, I don't know, maybe 7-8 minutes so far. Get those onions in there, and then let's get our teriyaki sauce in there. Just like so, and you just need enough liquid that will end up covering like 75% of the chicken. So let's just do a little mix here with this, just to get everything nice and incorporated. Again, doesn't this look familiar? Episode 2, gyudon.
Gyudon.
It's pretty much the same technique. And I actually did this because a couple weeks ago on Amazon, I bought an oyakodon pan, which is specifically designed to make gyudon.
Gyudon.
An oyakodon, which I mentioned, is chicken and egg over rice, similar to gyudon.
Gyudon.
You cook the same way in that pan with this teriyaki and stock braising liquid. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna make a big batch of this for the week to cook because oyakodon was so good. And yes, we are going to do oyakodon on this show at some point. So, back to our chicken. Back to our latex gloves first. Again, you don't want to be spreading salmonella all over your house, all over the town. We've got enough stuff going around right now to have another outbreak of salmonella or something like that. I'm sure somebody's watching this like, dude, you've been super unsanitary anyways right now. Like you think you're being sanitary, but you're not, but I'm trying my best. All right, next. I'm going to move my knife like onto this thing, onto this bag. All right, so then this next step is like really super simple and there's nothing pretty about it. You just take your, get that off there. Take your butterfly pieces of chicken, and I just chop them up into rough cubes. Nothing special here. Just go to town, pretend you're back in elementary school and you're doing an arts and crafts project and you have to cut up a bunch of chicken, which we all did in elementary school. So just into cubes. And I think doing this with shears, again, is just easier and faster for me. So I'm gonna work through all this chicken. I'll show you what the end result looks like in just a moment.
A few minutes later.
All right, so we've gone through, we've broken down all our chicken into little cubes, into little nuggets, whatever you wanna call them. We have our teriyaki sauce, our homemade teriyaki sauce, and our anchovy stock that's kind of cooking down and ready to go. And now all we do is we add our chicken into the broth, and we'll spread this out. And then we're going to toss the lid on, and we're just going to let this simmer away. It's really easy. It's a simple way to cook. I know I say everything's easy and quick and all that on the show all the time, but this really is. I've made this before work a couple times in a pinch just because it cooks really quickly. And when you cube up the chicken like this, it cooks through a little faster than if you're doing a full breast worth. And I'm actually going to go in here and I'm going to fish out our stock packet just to give us a little more room for our chicken. And kind of just go in there, spread this out thin, like this. And so we've got our chicken in there, we've got our homemade anchovy kelp mushroom stock, we've got our homemade teriyaki sauce in there, we've got our cubed up chicken. There's more than enough salt from the soy sauce and all that, so you don't have to worry about adding any salt additionally in here. Put our lid on, and we're gonna let this simmer away for maybe 7-8 minutes. Take a look at it. It'll kind of, when you put it bunched in like that, it kind of cooks, and some of the spare protein around the outside of the chicken kind of rebinds the chicken together. So it's nice to go in there after a couple minutes and just kind of move the chicken around so you can break it into the individual pieces. So we're gonna let that simmer in our stock. Our rice cooker is already flipped over as done. So if I wasn't on the show right now, what I would do is I'd unplug it. I would let the pot cool down a little bit because this black ring actually gets really hot because it's a metal thing on an induction plate pretty much. And then I would just literally, which we will eventually do, is I'd take this container here, I'd set it down, I'd flip the black pot over top here, all the rice would go in the thing. Usually I let it wait a little bit too because there's usually some steam at the bottom that gets trapped. I let that kind of steam off a little bit, throw the lid on, ready to take that into work. So the rice is done. Again, this is a couple days worth of rice. Our chicken's almost there as well. And then we'll show you, I'll plate up a meal because I'm hungry and I'm gonna eat my second meal of the day. I'm also gonna feed Tim behind the camera. And then I'm gonna pack everything up and I'm gonna be eating this throughout the week. So super easy to do. You can do it in a pinch. It's chicken and it's rice. We'll be back. I'll show you what the finished product looks like in just a moment.
Later.
So actually this is a good time to show you what I was talking about with the chicken kind of tightening up again. Like you can see, it's kind of all together in like one little piece. And I know that I don't have a ton of extra space to work with, but just kind of go in there and just softly kind of push the chicken pieces apart from one another and try not to make a big mess doing this, just because you want those nice individual pieces when you're going back to eat it later on. So you don't have to do a whole lot, but just kind of push them around, separate them. You can separate them even more once you kind of pull it out of the braising liquid completely and you have a little more space to work with. But I think we had the lid on here for 4 or 5 minutes. You can see most of the pink has already disappeared. And again, because these are chopped up into small little pieces, it just cooks through faster. Plus, with the lid on, you've got the steam going. So it's that extra little element of you're cooking the entire, even these pieces that are like 50% submerged, because that steam's there, you're cooking the tops of them as well. And I just find this cooks super fast compared to trying to cook a whole chicken breast for 25, 30 minutes in the oven, even at 425. You can cook up a bunch of chicken a whole lot faster this way. And it tastes great because you're imparting some of this homemade teriyaki flavor in that. So I don't know why I keep saying teriyaki like that. Teriyaki, teriyaki, teriyaki. So we broke them up, lid's back on. Gonna let that cook for a couple more minutes. It's gonna be good to roll. We're gonna plate up, and we're also gonna, I'll show you, not that you need to see the technique of scooping chicken into a container. I mean, you should be able to do that. Everybody should be able. It's not that hard. But just a little insight, slotted spoon is going to help you out because you don't want a lot of that teriyaki sauce going in. Now it's one of those things that's stuck in my head. But we'll come back, we'll plate it, we'll store it, we'll put it away, and we'll be good to go.
Later that same evening.
All right, so after about 15 or so minutes simmering off, our chicken is pretty much cooked through. Easiest way to check if you want to make sure, it's just find like a pretty decent sized piece. And I'm going to do this, it's going to be just off frame, so you won't see, but you just take a piece, put it on like a cutting board or something like that. You should be able to just break through it. Make sure it's not pink in the middle. That means it's cooked through. If it's not translucent, you're good to go. This chicken is ready. We're gonna throw these couple pieces back in there. And then I'm gonna show you what I normally do at this stage again on a Sunday. Usually I'd have a little music on in the background or some YouTube videos going. Just takes a couple minutes, keeps you entertained on a Sunday afternoon. Slotted spoon, like I said, go in there. And you do want to get the onions. And all you do is I like to just shake off some of the liquid, put it into your container of choice. I have a ton of these at home because we all know it's super hard to find containers and the matching lids. You've got to, it's like when you wash your socks and one of them disappears. Where'd the container go? Where'd the lid go? You think the lid fits the container you have, but it's just slightly too small or too big. Drives you crazy. So I have a million of these things and I try to keep them as organized as possible. So I would just kind of scoop these out like so. I'm not going to bore you by showing you the whole process, but you would fill that up. We'll come over here to our rice. And like I said, usually I would tip this. That's still hot. So in situations like that, I just go in here with the rice cookers give you this like rice paddle thing, and you just go in. And again, that's really hot still, so be careful. You can see that steam coming out, and you just toss it in to your, again, your vessel of choice. And if it's a Sunday and I've got time, I let them sit because you can see that steam coming off of there. And I don't like to trap that steam in there or will overcook the rice if you do that. And I have a feeling it probably breaks down these like plastic containers a little more than it probably should, even though they are BPA free and all that, but just be safe. So you would fill that up, you'd fill your chicken up, and you would have your chicken and rice to combine during the week. And I've mentioned it before, what I like to do is I will fill up my container with my 190 grams of cooked rice, 1 tablespoon of water. I put a piece of paper towel that I soak on top of that. I cook it for a minute 45. I take that off. I scoop on my 115 grams of chicken and I put that in on reheat for, I don't know, usually it's about like 45 seconds because again, this stuff, it's already cooked right up to the line. If you leave it in the microwave for too long, you're gonna overcook it even more, or you're gonna overcook it. Hopefully you didn't overcook it in here. You're gonna overcook it, dry it out, make it tough, mess up the texture. So like 45 seconds just to warm it up. This stuff tastes great cold anyway, so don't feel like you've got to get it piping hot again anyways. You just wanna warm it up a little bit, give a little bit of life back to it. And then I throw 1 tablespoon of teriyaki sauce, the Kikkoman's brand, on there. I mix it up and I do that twice a day, every day. I've been doing that for almost 2 years now here at North TV. You can do this at your job. You can do it at home. Rice in the rice cooker. You could do it on the stove, but I don't cook rice well on the stove, so I'm not even gonna try. Rice in the rice cooker, chicken braised in a big pot. You've got a week's worth of chicken, just about a week's worth of rice. You can stay on plan throughout the week and you can hit your physique goals, your weight loss goals, whatever it is, because you're eating nice, clean, simple carbs, and you're eating nice, clean, lean protein. It doesn't get any simpler than that. It's delicious. It's nutritious. Thank you guys for tuning in. 10 episodes. This is episode number 10. Thank you guys for tuning in to all of them. Thank you guys for tuning into this one. And we'll be back with another episode of Delicious and Nutritious.